There are 5 V's of big data. Number one is volume, number two is velocity, number three is variety, number four is veracity, and number five is the value. Volume means the huge data sets or the large scale of data. Velocity means the data generation, the rate at which data is being generated. Variety means data formats, which means that there can be a number of formats. Veracity means the quality of the data, and value means the usefulness of the data, right? And let's discuss all these 5 V's of big data in detail one by one. In this figure, you can also see an overview of about each V. So in volume, you can see that we are talking about the increase in the data set. We have huge data sets. In variety, you can see that we can have data in different formats like audio, video, and some numerical data as well. Velocity means the data that is being generated at an alarming rate. So it means that there are high rates of data which is being generated daily. And the value means that what is the significance of the data, right? And in veracity, we are basically talking about the uncertainty and inconsistencies present in the data. So let's discuss all these V's one by one because these V's are very important in the data science. So here is the bigger picture of the 5 V's which we just discussed, and you can see that the volume is about the scale of the data. So we have been increasing the scale on an alarming rate on daily basis. In velocity, we are basically talking about the speed of the data, the rate at which the data is being generated. In veracity, we are talking about the certainty of the data, and in variety, we are basically talking about different formats in which we can have data. So the first V is basically the volume of the data, right? So most of world's current data is in the form of unstructured data. So initially, before the emergence of big data, we usually dealt with the structured data only, which was in the relational form. But now we also have unstructured data, which is in the form of text. It can also be in the form of images, videos, or maybe it can be coming from some different sensors. So we can have different sensors that are being installed at various locations, and they are continuously generating data. Also, if we talk about, let's discuss an example. If we take the example of an autonomous car, then these autonomous cars or different autonomous vehicles, they are generating data at the rate of 4 terabytes per day, which is a very large amount of data. Similarly, Facebook's last analysis was on 60 petabytes of data, right? And they used Spark framework in order to process that 60 petabytes of data. Also, most businesses have data in classical formats and of relatively small size, right? So initially, this big data was not a problem, but with these challenges which are coming from big data, we also have a number of advantages as well. So the first challenge is about the volume and scale of the data, which means that we have large volumes of data and we have data in large scales. The second thing is about the velocity of the data. It means that the data is being streamed on a very high rate due to different appliances present at different locations. For example, if we talk about a firm, that firm can consist of hundred or thousands of sensors, and each sensor is basically generating data. On the other hand, if I talk about the UK, it has a large amount of video cameras placed at different locations, and all those video cameras are basically capturing and generating large amount of video data. So this data which is being generated from not only sensors but also video devices, this data is being generated on on a very large rate, or you can say that the velocity of this data is quite high, right? So an autonomous car is generating data at the rate of 2 milliseconds. Similarly, if I talk about edge computing devices, which are basically not only generating but processing the data on the edge, they are also generating data with a quite higher rate. Now the third thing is, the third V of the big data is the variety. It means that we can have data in different formats, which we are being termed it as the unstructured data, because this data can be in the form of images, videos, textual or binary data, or even in the form of different social media posts or tweets. So here in this chart you can see that all this data which is being generated, we are basically losing more than 80% of the data, right? So this data is being generated through different sensors, and there is a need to process this data, and we need some intelligent algorithms such as machine learning or AI algorithms, so that we can use this data and can generate some useful insights from this data. Now the fourth V of the big data is basically the variety, which means that we can have some structured data, we can also have some semi-structured data, and we can also have the unstructured data, right? And in this figure you can see that in structured data we are usually talking about the Excel sheets or CSV format data, in which we have the data stored in the tabular format, right? In semi-structure you can have some XML files or JSON, or you can use MongoDB. So this kind of techniques are being used in semi-structured data. In the unstructured data, on the other hand, is mostly related to audio, videos, images, and some censored data. So the last thing is basically, the second last thing is basically the veracity of the data, which means that the how much uncertainty is present in the data which we are talking about, because the data that is being generated on high volumes and high speed or high velocity, they are being generated from different sources, right? And sometimes we are unsure about the reliability of the source which is generating these large amounts of data, right? So in veracity we can have certain challenges, and most commonly addressed challenges are that the data can be incomplete, or the data can have redundant values or repeated values, or maybe we have some data that is not up to date, or not or maybe it is outdated, right? So these challenges can come from the veracity, and we use a number of techniques in order to overcome these challenges, and most commonly used techniques are the correct interpretation of missing data, so that we can get rid of the none values or missing values, or we can also use some statistical tools such as mean, standard deviations, in order to fill up the gap present in the data. Now the last V is basically related to the value of the data itself. We are talking about the usefulness of the data, that how much usable our data is, right? And this is very critical point here, because no matter how complex algorithms or how complex processing we are performing on the data, but if the data is not useful, or there is not enough value associated with the data, then it is very hard or near to impossible that we will be able to generate useful insights from the data, right? So the value or the usefulness of the data is of critical importance.